Here in the CKUA Bluegrass Hour, we are joined by Chris Jones. Chris grew up splitting time between Brooklyn, New York, and Albuquerque, New Mexico growing up, and his first band was Horse Country in New York as an 18-year-old. He'd go on to play with Lynn Morris in the band Whetstone Run, as well as the Lynn Morris band Special Consensus, Dave Evans, Weary Heart, and for years has fronted Chris Jones and the Night Drivers. He's recorded successful instructional video on rhythm bluegrass guitar, won awards for his songwriting talents, more than 15 years being the voice of Bluegrass Today on SiriusXM, in addition to hosting the Classic Bluegrass on Truegrass program. And if that wasn't enough, he also writes a weekly column for the e-zine Bluegrass Today. A loving husband, father, and curler. Thanks so much for joining us today, Chris.
Thanks for working the curling in there.
Did I miss anything, or did I pretty much?
No.
Okay.
That was really well done, and the horse country part is pretty obscure. So I compliment you for digging that up. I joined that band in New York State, where I was from, and banjo player named Bob Mavian was an early mentor of mine. He was the leader of that band.
You are a man who wears many hats, and I know at Blueberry you're going to be wearing a few of those. What will Stony Plain be expecting from Chris Jones, as well as Chris Jones and the Night Drivers?
Well, this is going to be fun. We are doing some workshops, some pre-festival workshops on Friday, and my wife Sally's going to be there, and we have often taught some harmony vocal classes with the two of us at some music camps in Canada and the US, and so it's going to be fun to do that again. And then other members of my band will be on hand to do some workshops. And so that's going to be a really nice experience. Then Friday night, we're doing a special concert that night for some people over there for the workshops and some VIPs, I guess. And then we'll do a couple of sets the show on Saturday.
Now, I believe you played the Ralph Stanley Memorial Festival in May earlier this year?
Yes, we did. Right just prior to doing a California tour for a few days, we played there. I love playing that festival. It's now hosted by Ralph Stanley II. And we had played their 50th anniversary festival the previous year. So much history there because it's on their home place, Carter and Ralph Stanley's home place, and you can visit the graves of Carter and Ralph Stanley, which we have done, and there's a lot of people connected to Ralph Stanley and Stanley Brothers bands of the past are represented there, and it's really special. I've always been a fanatic about the music of the Stanley Brothers and Ralph Stanley, so that was such an honor to play that festival.
Now, you've also had the opportunity now to kind of experience the post-COVID world, if you will, that it's kind of gone somewhat back to whatever normal is going to be in this world.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences, or maybe some of the similarities, or some of the things that you notice, not only from on stage or maybe at the record tables or just being with the crowds?
Well, I think there are a couple of things, both good and bad. And I think one of the good things is that the people that are out there are so grateful to be out listening to music, live music again. And the people that come and talk to me are just grateful for that contact. And I feel the same way. I just for somebody who has played music professionally most of my adult life and have gone out and played music, that was a difficult adjustment to just not do it and to not have that contact with people. And I swore that whenever we had a chance to get out there and do that again, I was not going to take any part of it for granted. It ended up tying into the title track of our album, which ended up calling Make Each Second Last. The title track of the album is called We Needed This Ride. And I think even though the song was actually written pre-pandemic, it came to mean that for me. I think when we get back out there and travel again and play music, we're going to feel like, yeah, we needed this ride. And now that we're out there, we want to make each second last and savor every moment of playing live music and playing in front of live people that can interact with us, and so yeah, I've noticed that appreciation goes both ways. Now, on the negative side, I think that we have, I think a lot of us had the hope that after we went through this period and we're out playing music again, that live music would really take off because everyone had missed it and everyone kind of had a new appreciation for that. I don't think that's happened, and I think it's still struggling around the world, partly because I think people got used to staying home, having stuff delivered, and new entertainment options and things. So I don't think that live music has had the boom that many of us hoped it would. Maybe it still will. But I think people's lifestyles changed a little bit in somewhat of a permanent way. A lot more homebodies than there used to be.
Well, and that leads into a really good question. You have been in the business for a while, and you've seen a change not only from vinyl to tapes to CDs to MP3s, but you've also seen that change of normal radio. You were one of the first bluegrass radio hosts to be on satellite radio. You write for the e-zine. I don't know if that's what the cool kids call it anymore,
Yeah,
but
right.
you write for an online. Have you always kind of seen those opportunities to adapt, or do you just feel like it's adapt or die? Or
Well, I have definitely tried to adapt, and which is definitely necessary. The satellite radio thing came out of doing traditional radio and making some contacts through that. When that technology came around, I was just very lucky to have that opportunity and have a situation because of the mobility of it, being able to do it and play music on the road. I could never do those two things at the same time. Um, I for a while in Franklin, Tennessee, I was on the radio every day, but it was just as I was forming my own band and we weren't working very much. And it was a time that I could juggle those things, but generally that was impossible to do. Um, so, I'm grateful that technology has made that possible. At the same time as we have seen the changes, it's hard. Our CD sales have disappeared, and what has replaced them is streaming and things that, to be honest, very difficult to make money at. Um, I mean, I think if you had told me when I was a kid listening to bluegrass music and getting excited about it, that I would have the ability to call up any song I wanted to on my phone and listen to it. This is like a dream come true. And I don't forget that is a really exciting thing. And to have all of these different radio opportunities and a chance to listen to shows like yours online and things that we never had that chance to do. So, I've driven out a range of CKUA, and I can't hear Darcy, or I've driven out of range of the Grand Ole Opry, just as my favorite art. So we have technology has made the whole way that we listen to music has improved it in many ways. Then on the business side, it's a challenge, and so I really want to try to adapt to the streaming world. We record for a record label called Mountain Home in North Carolina. They're really committed to kind of making that work and sort of exploiting the good parts of it. And I don't think that's going away. And so I think we're just trying to find ways to uh, accept that reality and concentrate on the good parts of it and take advantage any way we can.
now, at Blueberry and other venues in Alberta, we've seen different iterations of Chris Jones and the Night Drivers. Who is the current Chris Jones and the Night Drivers that we'll be seeing at Blueberry this year?
Well, I have to I'll be giving you some extremely current news
Ooh.
with this, and it's a mixed it's a mixed story. But Marshall Wilburn had been playing in the band for the past 3 years, but due to family medical concerns, Marshall has decided that he can no longer go on the road, and so our former bass player John Weisberger will be with us at Blueberry. John played in the band for 13 years, and so he has been. He's not coming back on a regular basis. We're going to make a sort of a long-term change in September. But so that is that's very current information. It hasn't been announced anywhere, but I'll tell you that that's the case. And Marshall has been. You mentioned playing in Whetstone Run. This is back when I was 25. We go way back musically, so this is a difficult thing. But I completely understand that decision given the circumstances, and he needs to do what he's got to do there. So I feel very fortunate to have been playing with him and recording. We've recorded a couple of albums with him. One is not out yet, but John Weisberger has been such an important part of our band for many years, and it's great that he is coming back. And he also has great workshop experience, and like I say, we have co-written probably the majority of songs that we released, during that time period when he was in the band. So we did a whole lot of that. That's going to be really nice to have that reunion happen, and it'll kind of be a Blueberry only thing because he's not coming back in a regular. He may fill in here and there, but so this will be a somewhat special circumstance. And then also in the band, a longtime member Mark Stoffel, who is our mandolin player, comes originally from Munich, Germany, and Mark has been just kind of the backbone of the instrumental sound of the band, really important part of the instrumental sound of what we do as a mandolin player. And not only has he recorded with us for, it's going on 15 years, he has recorded a couple of solo albums with our label Mountain Home, and a couple on his own. So he'll be on hand to be teaching mandolin. And then Grace Vantoff, who is actually a founding member of another one of the bands at Blueberry, Bill and the Bells. She will be playing banjo and a little steel string baritone ukulele and singing harmony. She's one of the newer members of the band, but has been in the band going on 4 years now.
Yeah, she's been featured on a few of your singles. I know Riding the Chief and she's playing baritone ukulele. Just beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of custom built steel string baritone uke, so it's almost tenor guitar like, but definitely not something you see every day on the festival stage.
Well, and that's one of the questions that I was going to ask you, is that you've had Gina Furtado as a banjo player. You had Ned Luberecki, yes, who's also going to be at Blueberry. Yes. When you get new members like that, how much is it the responsibility of them to become Chris Jones and the Night Drivers, and how much do you adapt to whatever that new person brings? And does that happen organically, or do you kind of sit and work through that?
That's a good question. I think some band leaders kind of take the approach of, and it's not a wrong approach, but it's just one way to do it. And maybe the more traditional way is as a band leader to just get musicians to play as much like the previous person as possible and fit in with the material. That's maybe more of a Nashville approach, is they'll play it like the record and play whatever the person before. I've tended to want to let people be themselves to an extent, and just make sure that whoever comes on board with the band has enough of a feel for the music and will be compatible with what they do. But I also want their musical personality to shine, and so that gives the band slightly different character with different band members. So no, Ned Luberecki, like I say, we'll have a reunion with Ned and John, and Ned had his own distinctive way of playing, and then when he left, we just had to go a very different direction, and brought in Gina Furtado, and so it's every time I think it's brought in somebody with a different that brings something different to the band, that does things that are compatible with what we've done before. So it's a mixture. I want them to fit in with the overall sound, but also be themselves.
And I know you not only coming probably from that songwriting realm, but also maybe growing up in New York, you actually believe in probably a more arrangement of songs than some standard bluegrass bands. And I think you even talked about like the concept of an instrumental hook uh to kind of draw and make sure to anchor that song into I guess an earworm maybe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, and these involve influences really outside of bluegrass music, uh, country and even rock and roll and things where there's something else instrumentally going on that is a part of the song, but maybe it's not strictly part of the lyric and the chorus melody. So we've had some songs with this kind of thing, an additional melody part that I have written, or that the band has contributed, or something that we incorporate into what we're doing. Trying to think of an example. We had a song called "Looking for the Bridge," and there's this kind of an instrumental thing that happens in there that's not really specifically part of the song. You can do the song without it, but it becomes part of the character of the song. That's been something of interest to me for quite a while. It's something that you know the pop, we could call it jazz, and bluegrass artist, Bruce Hornsby, who's dabbled in a whole lot of other kinds of music. I always really appreciate what he did, and he has done a lot of that kind of thing where there's a sort of a counter melody going on to that fits with the basic melody of the song. There's things like that.
So as I mentioned with Gina and Grace, you grew up kind of on the road playing with Lynn Morris and Greg Cahill, of course, with Special Consensus and
Yeah.
Dave Evans. Have you taken some of the things that they've taught you and passed that on to maybe the younger generation that you've been playing with, or other people that you encounter, the business side maybe more so than the musical
Right.
side, or do you kind of just allow them to find their own in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely certainly been influenced by all those people that I played with before, just kind of observing what they did as band leaders, and what worked, and what I wanted to continue, and some things that didn't seem like they worked. And but Greg Cahill is somebody who's always he's always just given 100% to whatever he's doing, and as he's a very generous nature as a band leader, and as a performer, and is in his relations with who he works for, and things like that. So that I thought that was a really good thing, a really important thing to carry on. Lynn Morris is somebody that I played with her as sort of as a member of a band with a different leader, and played with her when she was the leader, and she was really great for, I think, um, making sure that the music was really solid, and the importance of kind of diligent rehearsal of stuff. That is something that I got from her. And Lynn also had a great uh, set list writing style. Learned some important set list code from sort of famous set lists with different codes. As somebody's going to talk here, and one song is going to go into another one. I've tried to somewhat uh, continue the tradition of Lynn Morris set list code. But I would say that Lynn and Marshall and I were very musically compatible, and so it's sort of appropriate that I've played music with them off and on uh, in various times of my career. And of course, Special Consensus is so important. I learned a whole lot in that. Just that was my first full time band, and so I learned so much from Greg and from that whole experience.
Well, I mean, I think of that band as an internship. I mean, like
Yeah,
Josh Williams, there's been so many well, not even just lead singers, just
yeah,
musicians that have gone through. And I do see your band in that as well, that there is an internship component in regards to people being able to learn on the road. Um, uh, from the flip side of that, when you get someone like Grace Van Hoff, who has played with Bill and the Bells as well as Della May, when they bring that maybe younger energy and possibly that different knowledge in regards to social media presence, that's that other generation, kind of what do you get from them, I guess, as a band leader?
Well, I think that's really important. I think just being open to what other people and especially younger people bring to the table in that regard, and then with Grace musically, um, she has had a real interest in early country music, and is a big fan of Jimmy Rogers, and we share those interests and have been able to concentrate more on that and have some of that stuff, which you'll hear more in future releases. But it's again part of trying to utilize what different band members bring to the table, both musically and in terms of promotion of the music and things like that. So that's been really good. Grace has been such a great presence in the band, I think, from a stage standpoint and just from just kind of the group spirit of things. And of course, there's the added bonus of Grace's graphic design work, which is now part of so Grace has designed our current album cover and is now doing all of our single covers, and will do a future album, and she's now won 2 IBMA awards for that work, and we're lucky to have that component, and so that wasn't something I even expected.
Those singles have just some beautiful artwork on them. They're just incredible. That is, that is so cool to see.
Yeah, she's lately had an inspiration from sort of early 60s album cover designs, and there's sort of that feeling. So that we ended up, the last video we did for that reason, we were sort of going, and Grace is a sharp dresser and interested in vintage things, and so we kind of went for a sort of early 60s vibe, what we're doing, sort of to match the graphic design work.
Even that design work has like the movie posters even from that era, like almost like the Vertigo type,
Yeah, right,
very
right.
very sharp lines, and yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
they're just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
um Now we've talked about Grace. Mark is, of course, as you said, was born in Munich, and I do know that I think as early as the 1980s you played in Holland and has developed a fan base over there, not just in Holland, but I know in Europe. Um, what do you experience regards to going over to play in Holland or anywhere in Europe and in Canada and in the US? Kind of what are the similarities and what are those big differences that you see culturally in those bluegrass worlds?
Well, the similarity is that it's still a sort of a non-mainstream music, and it has its sort of cult following all over the world that's similar in many ways. And the people that listen to this music in Europe do have a lot in common with people in the US and in Canada. uh, they're passionate about it, and they know a lot about it, and so then I think what's always fun for North American musicians and experiences is going over there, and just the fact that they don't get to see the music, hear the music as often as people do here. They get really excited about it, and the audiences are wonderful and extremely appreciative when they have a chance to hear a band from over here. So it's that's always fun for us, and for me that has been a great experience. First time I went over with a bluegrass band. Actually, the first time I went over to Europe, I was 18 and was playing rhythm guitar for some for fiddle music for dancers, that's another story. But my first time with a bluegrass band, I guess I was it was in the mid 1980s, and I was playing with Marshall and Lynn Morris and Lee Olson and in the band Whetstone Run. We had a grueling 5-week tour over there, but that was my first time to get to know the bluegrass fans in Europe, and lifelong friendships developed. And in fact, my first solo album after I started, putting my own band together, my first solo album came out on a Dutch label, thanks to those connections, the Strictly Country label. That was a Dutch venture. And so I'm gonna say those friendships have endured, and I have played over there a lot, and that's how I got to know Mark, originally playing in the Munich area. In fact, at one time, he and his wife at the time put us up, put a whole band up at their house. So we got to know him that way, never dreaming that at some point we'd be playing professionally together back in North America.
And was he playing first with your wife Sally, and then?
No, but he has done some playing with her.
Okay.
He played initially as a fill-in with my band on some shows where we had, I guess, our fourth or like mandolin fiddle spot was in flux, and I was using a couple of different people, and Mark was one of them. And then later on, he did some shows with Sally, including here in Western Canada. He played with Sally in Dawson Creek. We had a festival there.
Speaking of Dawson Creek area and your wife, you originally met Sally at a bluegrass festival that was similar to Blueberry. It was in northern BC. I think it was put on by Bob Roller, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct, in Chetwynd. So yeah, that will always have a special place in my memory. It was a fun festival too, and I played there with Weary Hearts, and it was a fateful festival for half the band. It was because Ron Block had met his wife there, and that's how I got to know the Maxwell family, and they went over to their farm in Cherry Point, Alberta, and he developed this relationship with his wife Sandra. And so when I joined the band, that was before my time, and I joined the band, they were going back up to play in Alberta and BC and play this festival again in Chetwynd, and also go to the wedding of Ron and Sandra. So I ended up meeting Sally there at the very same festival, and got to know her by being over at the family at the wedding, and that's how these things happen sometimes.
Was it love at first pick? Did you play together or dance together, or what?
Well,
What's the romance story?
no, I think we already liked each other a lot before I ever heard her play or sing. So that was she had heard me play and sing, but when I heard her, I thought, wow, what a singer, what a musician! That was just bonus. And then I came to understand that she was doing music pretty seriously, and had done some studio work in the Vancouver area where she was a student, and so different music at that time. But then we started playing some things together. In fact, I was watching an old videotape. We did sing a duet at Ron and Sandra's wedding, and we had that was a first for us.
And I know for many at Blueberry, it is going to be a very sweet reunion to see both you and your wife come and
Yes.
interact with a lot of those fans that have grown up with you through the years. Um, what's your first memory of Blueberry? Do you remember, or some significant memories of playing at the Blueberry Bluegrass Festival?
Yes, I played the festival. It was either the first or the second year that I had a band. We went pretty early on, and I want to say 1996 or 7. Um, and the original bass player in the band was John Pinnell. He was actually the original Union Station bass player, and Jesse Brock playing the mandolin at the time, and a banjo player named Doug Connect, who was our first banjo player. And so we played Blueberry in that configuration. And I remember having some logistical issues with a missed plane, and my making the back and forth run to the Edmonton airport while the festival was going on, and there was, but yeah, it was loved the festival. It was such a joy to be there, and I'm thinking that was the first since Chetwynd was the first Canadian festival I had played with my own band. So it was, yeah, it was special time.
Again, just thanks so much, Chris, for taking the time for doing this. It's much
Oh,
appreciated.
my pleasure.